Yo, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Quinterverse. My name is Quinn, and with the holidays right around the corner and winter now in full swing for a lot of us, including myself, I thought this would be the absolute perfect time to look back at some of my personal favorite winter and snow levels in Mario games. Now, I'm going to give you guys a quick heads up here. This list is going to be based on a mix of nostalgia, winter atmosphere, level design, and music. And these levels might not be the best in the game, they may be the best, but they're the ones that feel the most like winter to me and has left a lasting impression over the years. So I'll be breaking down my top 10 Mario winter levels and sharing why each one of them earned a spot on the list. But before we jump in, I encourage each and every one of you to hit that like button, greatly helps out the channel. Also make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Turn on that bell for all notifications so you guys will know either when I'm uploading or streaming. Follow me on social media, that's Twitter, aka X, and Instagram for all kinds of news and updates about the Quinterverse channel. Alright guys, let's jump into this list. Let's go! Now we're going to kick off this list at number 10, which is Freezy Flake Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy 2. Now this level has such a calm and cozy atmosphere, and yet it has these little things that keep you on your toes, you know. Right from the start, you're greeted with a star bunny in a log cabin, and you're also greeted with a bunch of snowman enemies, including a snow Bowser, which is also the main purpose of the level. And it all blends in perfectly with that classic charm, you know. And one of the things I really appreciate about this level is the visuals, you know. What I'm talking about is visuals like, for example, there's a section where you're walking through a little mini snowstorm on your way to the boss, which is a nice touch right there. There's also a little skating section where you're playing a mini game to get a star, which is pretty cool. And it just makes you feel like you're kind of wandering through a mini winter wonderland, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean? And speaking of the bosses, even though Sorbetti isn't the most memorable boss in the series, I kind of like him. You know, he's cute, but also creepy in his own way, because he's basically a giant spiked snowman head, you know? And he's cool, but I definitely prefer the other snowman. Mostly because that other snowman isn't really trying to crush me, you know? Even though Freezy Flake Galaxy didn't make it higher on the list, it is a very good winter level, and it's a great way to kick off this ranking. Coming in at number 9, we got Slipskate, Slope, and Chris Climb Castle from Bowser's Fury. Now, I went back and forth on whether to treat these as separate entries or to combine them, because Bowser's Fury is basically just one big open world, very good game, you know what I mean? So I decided to group them together and talk a little bit about them both. Now, what I really like about Slipskate Slope is the ice skating obstacle course, you know? Grabbing the skate power-up and sliding across the ice while collecting cat shards is just really fun to me, you know? I've replayed this section a couple of times, not only for the challenge of collecting cat shines, but because, again, it's really fun. And one of my favorite things about the ice areas in Bowser's Fury is how they look, you know? Visually, they're very stunning, especially when Fury Bowser shows up. It's hard to explain, but the rain and just the chaos, everything that comes from Fury Bowser just comes together really well in the ice area. And then there's Chris Climb Castle, where you're trying to navigate the castle-like structure to collect cat shards for a cat shine. Now, I really admire the challenge right there, especially when Fury Bowser shows up and suddenly everything becomes way more intense, you know? Because of the unique mechanics and visuals and the added pressure from Fury Bowser, these areas earned the number 9 spot on my list. Coming in at number 8 is Snowman's Land from Super Mario 64. Now, Snowman's Land isn't as iconic as the other snow level in this game, which I'll get to later on this list, but even so, I still really admire this stage and consider it one of my favorite Mario winter levels. Now, what makes this stage stand out to me is that even though it does feel pretty small when you're playing it, there's actually a lot going on. You know, you have the giant snowman blowing you off the bridge, forcing you to hide behind the mother penguin just to make it across. You also have the star level where you're trying to crawl into a giant igloo, and then you get to navigate to maze to collect 8 red coins, which for some reason always tripped me up as a kid. And on top of that, you have the icy platforms everywhere where the giant bully is trying to knock you off, and of course, we have the iconic spin drift enemies, which they spin you up and then they glide you down. And honestly, they're ingrained in my memory whenever I think of this level. And let's be real, who could forget Moneybags? Snowman Lands might not be the most famous Mario level, but it's still packed with personality and absolutely deserves a spot at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is Shiver City from Paper Mario on the Nintendo 64. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Paper Mario is one of my all-time favorite games. And it's honestly tough for me to choose between 64 and Thousand Year Door, you know? I'll admit, Thousand Year Door to me is still the better game overall, but Paper Mario 64 is still a very, very, very close second, which is why I included this as one of my most nostalgic chapters on this list. Now, when you first arrive in Shiver City, the entire town is snowed in, and everyone's trapped inside, and then the mayor suddenly collapses, which immediately kicks off a murder mystery. That's right, you're accused of being involved, and you have to prove your innocence by questioning penguins, gathering clues, and solving the mystery, all while still trying to rescue the star spirit that you came for. And just when you think things are settling down, Junior Trooper shows up again, unfortunately stronger than ever, because now he learns magic. And I remember him being one of the most annoying parts of the game, and this fight definitely didn't change that. All of this eventually leads to the Crystal Palace, which, by the way, I am a huge fan of all the castle-style dungeons in the Paper Mario games. And this is where you face off against the chapter boss, the Crystal King. And yeah, he was kind of annoying in his own way, you know? He can summon crystal bits that can also increase his attack power the more he summons. He can also heal himself, and to make things worse, he can split himself into 3 different copies where only one of them is real and 2 are fake. And I remember having to use Bombette's Mega Bomb so you didn't have to guess which is which, you know? And Shiver City blends mystery, winter atmosphere, and humor pretty cool. And the genuine challenge that's in it is one of the most unforgettable things about this chapter, which is why it earns a spot on the list. Coming in at number 6 is Frosted Glacier from New Super Mario Bros. U. Now, I went back and forth on how to approach this one because there's a couple of specific levels in this world that really stands out to me, like Spinning Star Skies and Prickly Goombas, but ultimately, I decided to include Frosted Glacier as a whole on this list because I didn't feel like it was necessary to include them as separate entries, you know? Now, gameplay-wise, Frosted Glacier doesn't necessarily do anything wildly different than any other 2D Mario Snow World. But what really earns a spot on the list here for me is the atmosphere. And honestly, if you couldn't guess it by now, that's the big reason why I included it on this list, you know? Now, visually, the world is absolutely beautiful. You got the snow-covered pine trees, the deep blue indigo mountains in the background, and you have the star-filled night sky where you can actually see the constellations. Now, in this level, like Spinning Star Skies, you can literally jump on the stars, which is kind of a cool touch to me, you know? Now, one of my favorite details about Frosted Glacier is that it takes place entirely at night, you know? On top of the constellations, you can even see the Aurora Borealis in the sky, especially in levels like Prickly Goombas. You know, it gives the whole world just a calm, magic winter vibe that I just can't help but admire. Now, gameplay-wise, it still feels like just regular 2D Mario game, something that you would see in other games. You know, you got the slippery platforms, familiar enemies like the sliding penguins from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. You got a ghost house, of course, just like I believe New Super Mario Bros. Wii had. And of course, you have the final fight against Wendy. And yes, I can't forget about the Flipperous enemies or something like that. What is it, Flipperous or something like that? Frosted Glacier is also an optional world, so you technically don't have to beat this world to progress. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's absolutely worth visiting, you know, not just for the collectibles and the progress, but for the atmosphere and the presentation alone. Because of that, Frosted Glacier easily earns number 6 on my list. Coming in at number 5 is Snowball Park from Super Mario 3D World. Now, this level is really special to me, not just because of how it looks, but because my wife and I played this level together in one of our earliest memories. And it turned into one of those gaming moments that just sticks with you, you know? Snowball Park is the very first level of World 3, and right away it throws you into this bright, snowy playground. The ice, the snow-covered platforms, and the festive atmosphere immediately sets the tone for this entire level, you know? And one of the things I really like about this level is the ice skate mechanic, you know? Being able to grab the ice skate power-up and slide across the stage, bashing into enemies, just make it feel playful and different, you know? Especially for a Mario level. And it's like fun without it being too challenging and stressful, which makes it perfect to play together with a buddy, you know? And not only do you have, of course, the propeller block, but you also have that ice skating mechanic that you can use throughout the level, you know? Visually, the level looks very beautiful, you know. You have the glowing lights like the glowing blocks and the glowing rabbits, you know. Of course, you have the snowy trees and the way the ice just reflects everything. It just feels like the entire level is just illuminating with glow, you know what I mean? It's just glowing all together, giving that cozy winter vibe, you know. And of course, we have to talk about the Snowpoke enemies. And the Snowpoke enemies, I want to talk to you guys about that because my wife always thought they was creepy, you know, and I guess they can be a little creepy here and there. I personally never really found them creepy because I've seen worse. But listen, my wife said that she's growing into them, you know, they're starting to grow on her, so who knows, maybe the experience grew on her as well. So it just makes the whole experience more memorable. And Snowball Park just blends in great with visuals, fun mechanics, and personal memories for me, which is why it earned a spot on the list. Coming in at number 4 is Mount Wario from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now this is easily one of the most unique and memorable winter tracks that Mario Kart ever had. Instead of racing 3 laps around the same course, Mount Wario takes you on one long, continuous race from the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom as if you're snowboarding down Mount Everest right there. And that alone makes it stand out, you know? Now the track is split into 3 different sections, and each one of them feels different, you know? You start out at the snowy summit, start racing through the icy turns and caves, you know, you start racing through the dam and the forest, and then eventually you'll end up in a full ski resort with cheering spectators lining up at the finish line. Now, one of the things I really love about Mount Wario is how cinematic it feels, you know? Like each lap and section has its own music, so it generally feels like a journey, like an intense journey that you gotta remember you're racing through. You know, you're trying to race all the way down to the finish line. It makes it more intense, you know? And by the time you reach the final section, it feels like one big downhill finale. Now, visually, this track is incredible, you know? You gotta love the snow-covered mountains, the forest paths, the ski lifts, and then the anti-gravity sections. They all come together to make one exciting winter-themed course in the entire series, you know? And now Mount Wario blends speed, spectacle, and winter atmosphere perfectly, which is why it earns the number 4 spot on the list. Coming in at number 3 is the Snow Kingdom, which also has Shiveria from Super Mario Odyssey. Now this is easily one of the most memorable winter worlds in the modern Mario games, you know, and a big reason for that is how strong the atmosphere and the world building are in this game. You know, I remember picking up Mario Odyssey day 1 at midnight when this came out. So you better believe I was ready for this level. You better believe I was hyped for this level, you know? Now, when you first arrive in Snow Kingdom, you're hit with a full-on blizzard, you know? The winds are harsh, the visibility is low, and everything outside feels cold and dangerous, especially with the freezing water that slowly drains your health if you're not careful. But once you make your way underground into Shiveria itself, the entire mood changes, you know? The town is warm, cozy, and welcoming. The music softens and becomes more playful, and there's firelight everywhere, and the Shiverians, let me tell you, make the entire place feel alive, you know? And I like this complete contrast, you know? It went from being just a harsh winter world to just being very home friendly. It just went to being very friendly and more neighborly, you know? It makes the whole world stand out. And talking about Shiveria a little bit, the culture about this place is just so iconic, you know? The kingdom clearly draws inspiration from places like Siberia or Scandinavia. From the wooden architecture and the knitwear to the nesting dolls you can buy in the shop, you know? It feels like a real place, not just a Mario level. And of course, the heart of the Snow Kingdom is the Bound Bowl Grand Prix, helping the Shiverians reopen the race, competing in it yourself, and eventually restoring the kingdom by clearing the blizzard is such a satisfying progression. You know, the races are intense. They can be, because you can, of course, I believe you can earn more than 1 moon. You know, the more times you play the game, the more it gets a little harder. So it can get chaotic, and it just makes the whole entire kingdom unique, you know? And between the harsh frozen exterior to the warm community underneath, this just makes this whole entire level memorable. And that's why the Snow Kingdom perfectly shows how creative Mario Winter Worlds can be, and that's why it earned the number 3 spot on the list. Coming in at number 2 is Cool Cool Mountain from Super Mario 64. Now, for a lot of people, this is the Mario Winter level, and honestly, it's hard to argue against that, you know? Cool Cool Mountain is basically the earliest snow world that many of us has experienced in the very first 3D Mario game, and it has left a huge impression on all of us, especially me with the amount of times I beat this game, you know? Now, how it works is that you start right at the top of the mountain near the little cottage, and from there, the level just opens up, you know? You got multiple ways to explore the level, you know? You can start by sliding down the mountain. You can start by, of course, jumping on the other side to see where you land. And of course, you can jump inside the cottage where you're going to meet the big penguin to start a race. And then there's so much more that you can do, of course. And it really gives you that sense of scale that Super Mario 64 was just so good at, you know? And of course, we gotta talk more about the penguins, you know? Like I said before, if you jump into Cottage, you're gonna start by racing the big penguin down one of the most memorable slides in the entire game. And then there's the baby penguin, which apparently has a name, I believe, Tuxie or something, or Tuxie. I don't really know how to pronounce it. But basically, you have to take the baby penguin and reunite the baby with his mother. Now, let's be honest for a second. I know I'm not the only one who at least once picked up that baby and accidentally, on purpose, dropped him off the mountain. And let's not pretend y'all didn't do it too. I'm looking at all of you. The layout of Cool Cool Mountain is also just full of classic Mario moments. You know, you got the icy bridges with Mr. Blizzard enemies. You know, you have, of course, the spin drifts that I mentioned earlier in the list throughout the entire level. And, of course, you have the headless snowman near the bottom, which for some reason tripped me up a little bit, you know, because I believe in that level you have to ride down with the snowman's body all the way until it reaches him, which if you don't follow the exact same snowball, it will fall off the mountain. So that was honestly a pain, you know? And even this level even has some cannon sections that you can also explore as well. But you better watch out, because you might blow yourself off the mountain like I did, you know? What really makes Cool Cool Mountain special is how simple but effective this is, you know? The music, the snow, the characters, and the level design all just comes together. And that's why, if you're a Mario fan, you most likely remember this level. You know, it just creates a feeling that it's just timeless, you know? And it may not be the flashiest winter level on the list, but it just sets the standard, which is why Cool Cool Mountain earned its place at number 2. Now, before we get to my number 1 pick, I want to take a moment to shout out some honorable mentions, you know? These winter levels are levels that I actually absolutely love, but they just barely did not make my top 10. So we're going to start out with Merry Mountain from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, you know? This one is straight up Christmas in Mario Kart form. The lights, the decorations, the snow, it's festive in the best way, you know? And I think it's a great level to play, especially around the Christmas time. The next is Condarts Away from Super Mario Bros. Wonder, you know? This is from Fluff Puff Peaks, which is basically considered a winter level because of the icy mountains, you know? This one is really creative and visually striking. That just shows off how imaginative Wonder can be. You know, it just shows off how creative Wonder can be, especially when it comes to winter mountains and stuff. The next is World 4 from Paper Mario Sticker Star. Now, Sticker Star is a mixed bag, you know. I remember playing Sticker Star and I didn't get that far in the game, especially World 4, but I did see a full gameplay from YouTubers. And I gotta say that this snow world has such a great atmosphere, you know, and some genuinely memorable moments, you know. The next we have is Shiver Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy 2. You know, I love the fire and ice concept, you know, I really do. But Galaxy, you know, the thing is, we already have some good representation of this already on the list. And I just feel like Shiver Burn wasn't all that memorable to me. Now, if it's memorable to you guys, that's completely fine, but even though I did play that level in that Galaxy and beat it, it's just not that memorable to me, but it's still a good one nonetheless, you know? Next we have is World 3 from Super Mario Bros. Wii, you know? This is basically the classic snow world that a lot of people enjoy, you know? A lot of people think of when they think of the term Super Mario Winter, you know? They think of winter. When they think of 2D Mario Winter, they think of World 3. And World 3 done a great job introducing stuff like the all-new Penguin power-up, and that's why I wanted to give it an honorable mention, you know. It's not one of my favorites, but it's definitely up there. Lastly, we have Mount Pajama Jeff from Mario and Luigi Dream Team, you know. I like the cozy and charm vibes that this level gives out, you know. And to me, this is very underrated when it comes to Mario RPG winter locations, you know. And even though, like I said, I feel the same way of how I feel when I look at World 4 from Sticker Star, you know. I played Dream Team before, but I haven't gotten that far. But I have seen YouTubers explore this world, and it looks great. And I just wanted to shout this out because Dream Team still is one of my favorite games that I'm still, to this day, I need to beat this game. I really need to beat this game, but I wanted to give it an honorable mention nonetheless, you know. Alright guys, let's go to the number 1. And finally, my number 1 Mario Winter level of all time is Freeze Flame Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy. Now, this level is one of my favorite galaxies in the entire game. Out of Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, this is one of my top 3. And let me tell you something. The atmosphere, the creativity, the music, and the level design is all unforgettable. The word unforgettable is all wrapped up into one galaxy. Now, what immediately makes Freeze Flame Galaxy stand out is basically the core concept, which I did mention before. I love the hot and cold colliding concept. You know, half of the galaxy is made up of frozen ice planets, snowy cliffs, and freezing water, while the other half throws you into lava-filled ruins and fiery platforms, you know, which makes the level unforgettable in its own way, right there. Now, visually, the galaxy is stunning, you know. The icy sections are calm and beautiful, you know, they have such a very soft tone with the snow-covered landscapes and the aurora glowing in the background, you know, while the fire sections just feels dangerous, intense, you know. Basically, it's like just a mixture of calm and intense mixed together. It's like yin and yang, you know what I mean? It basically makes sure that you keep on your toes or that you have a peaceful vibe. Now, one of my favorite parts of the galaxy is Freezy Peak, you know, and talking about that, you know, you have to climb the icy mountain, skate across the frozen water as Ice Mario, and just taking a second to talk about Ice Mario, I like that in Super Mario Galaxy, Ice Mario is different. So when you get the Ice Flower in other Mario games, like New Super Mario Bros., of course you're going to get the Ice Power-Up, you know, which is basically like the Fire Power-Up, except instead of fireballs, you throw ice balls that freezes your enemy. But in Galaxy, you basically have Mario be covered completely in ice. And then Mario has the abilities to walk on water by freezing the water under him. So he not only can he walk on water, he can also skate on water because he can make frozen platforms for himself, which I always thought was pretty good. You know, he can't throw ice balls like in other Mario games, but you know what? This is basically a very unique power-up right there, you know? And you basically use the ice power-up to face enemies like Baron Burr at the very top of the mountain, you know? Which, Baron Burr is not a hard boss fight. It's actually very simple, but it is pretty cool when you're introducing the Ice Flower to the game, you know? And then there's the lava side, you know, which basically that consists of ruined structures rising out of molten lava pits, you know what I mean? And you have the collapsing platforms and tight jumps that you have to make sure you test your skills, you know? And levels like Freeze Flame's Blistering Core and Hot and Cold Collide perfectly show how creative Galaxy can be. And you guys know how much I like Super Mario Galaxy. If you don't know, then guess what? I love Super Mario Galaxy. And I also have to mention the music, you know, just the way the soundtrack shifts depending whether you're on the ice or the lava side just really adds to the experience, you know. It basically just kind of feels more like a yin and yang level, you know, and it makes the galaxy feel alive and just interactive, you know. And Freeze Flame Galaxy isn't just a great winter level. I picked it because it's one of the better designed galaxy levels that I've ever experienced, you know, when playing Mario. It is something that's small, but it's very impactful, you know, and I'm a very big sucker when it comes to great level design. And it's basically a perfect balance of challenge, atmosphere, and creativity, you know. And every time I think about Mario Winter levels, this one is one that comes to mind, you know. And even though not all of it's about snow and winter, it's a great blend, you know. It's definitely a great blend, and I guess you can think of it like opposites attract or however you want to interpret it. But this is the reason why Freeze Flame Galaxy is my #1 pick for Mario Winter levels. And that, everyone, is my top 10 Mario Winter levels. Let me tell you guys something. This list was definitely a lot of fun to put together, you know, and I even had my wife help me put together this list because I had to actually really think about, out of all the Mario games I played, or at least the Mario games I've also saw, which level really sticks out to me, you know, what level sticks out to me, and even the levels that really didn't make the list, what winter levels could I mention just because they might be some of your favorite winter levels, you know? So this definitely reminded me just how great Nintendo is at putting together just that winter vibe when it comes to levels, you know? Now, I want to hear from all of you. What is your favorite Mario snow or winter level, you know? Which ones do you think I left out? Is one of the levels on the list? Did I not mention your favorite? If I did, please list it down below and tell me why it's your favorite Mario level, you know? And as always, thank you guys so very much for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Greatly helps out our channel. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Turn on that bell for all notifications so you guys will know either when I'm uploading or streaming. Follow me on social media. That's Twitter, aka X, and Instagram for all kinds of news and updates about the Quintiverse channel. And I got a lot of content coming soon. You know, as you guys already know, you guys voted for this, but there is still videos I'm going to make, such as what could be the next 3D Sonic game, and videos like my thoughts on the Game Awards. So make sure you guys stay tuned. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys. God bless, and please have a great rest of your day, and Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho! Woo! And a Happy New Year.